So looking at our objective today, we're going to learn about cell theory, which these notes are very, very short and to the point. So your essential question, which should be going on page 121, is how does the cell theory help us classify living things? So looking at cells, which is the basic unit of all living things, over time, scientists have come up with a theory which is called the cell theory. This cell theory basically just describes what we consider a cell to be and what we consider living. Because if we think of our levels of organization, the cell is the basic functional unit of all living things. So in order for something to be considered living, it has to have at least one cell. Okay? So this theory helps us classify what is living and what is not living. So looking at the cell theory, it has basically just three major portions or three major parts to it. The first part of the cell theory says, girls, you need to stop talking. First up, part of cell theory says all living things or organisms are made out of cells and their products. So in order for something to be considered living, they should have cells, at least one, and the product of a cell. So when we think of the product of a cell, we're basically talking about inside a cell we have mitochondria. The mitochondria basically go through cellular respiration. It gives us energy, and it gives the cell energy in order to work. The inside cell also makes proteins to either make things within the cell or make things that are outside of the cell. So in order for something to be considered living, it's made out of the cells and it's made out of the products that come from the cells. The second part to it is that the only way you get new cells is by by the old cells creating those new cells. So new cells are created by old cells that basically divide into two. So remember when we talked about sexual and asexual reproduction? What did we know about asexual reproduction? How many parents do we have? Yes? One. So asexual reproduction says that you start off with one parent, right? And then by a different way, you end up with two, and they're exactly the same, right? And I said that in your body, your cells go through asexual reproduction. Now, we as organisms reproduce sexually because a sperm and an egg have to unite to fertilize to make a new baby. But the cells, our body cells, actually go through asexual reproduction all the time because in order for them to fix organs and so on, they have to split. And they split in half, and you get two. And then they split in half, and you get four, and so on. So our cells and the cells of all organisms, plant cells, euglena, fungus, any cell out there, bacteria, all those cells that are the new cells, you have to get from the old cells. And for the most part, it's done through asexual reproduction because of the fact that they're splitting into two. Then the last one basically says the cells are the basic building units of all life. Which, truthfully, if you look at that sentence, it's almost like our definition for a cell in our levels of organization. That all cells are the basic building units of life. It's a functional unit of all living things. So, in order for us to consider something living, it has to follow these three things. If it cannot follow those three things, then it's not considered a living thing. So if I take the desk or the pencil that you're looking at, okay, it's made out of cell products, right? If I think of this wood, is it made out of cells? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
This is wood. It's made out of cells, it's made out of cell products. So that's a check. New cells are created by old cells divided into two. Can these cells divide into new ones? So it's not considered. So even though it has part of it, it has to go through all three in order for it to be considered living. So that's how the cell theory allows us to classify things as living and non-living things. Because there's things out there, such as this wood, that is made out of cells, because it was a tree, but it can no longer be considered living because these cells cannot asexually reproduce, asexually reproduce and divide into new ones. Okay? That is how this theory allows us to define a living thing from a non-living thing. Any questions? Cameraman, you're not paying attention. Awesome.